Hey guys, I have another story from you from the True Bizarre Crimes. This one is called the Greenbrier Ghost, actually. So this one I thought was really cool. There's a popular urban legend that tells a tale of a woman who always wore a ribbon around her neck. People would tease her about her constant accessory, but she still never took it off. She warned people they wouldn't like what they saw if she removed it. One day, a prankster decided to snatch it from her. All the eager onlookers' faces fell as they saw the woman's neck bend and her head fall off her body. Of course, that's just a playground story to scare the children, but it's not entirely unlikely the real life story of Elva Zona Heister Shue. On January 23rd, 1897, blacksmith Erasmus Edward Shue sent 11-year-old Andy Jones, a young neighborhood boy who often ran errands for him, to his home to see if his new wife, Zona, needed anything from the market. The boy walked into the home in Greenbrier County, West Virginia, expecting Zona to be happily going about her wifely duties and awaiting her husband's return. Instead, he found her body lying lifeless on the floor at the foot of the stairs. She was lying straight out on her legs together with one arm across her chest and one by her side. From the way she was lying, it certainly didn't look like she had simply slipped and fallen down the stairs. Andy was confused and thought she might have just decided to take a nap on the floor. He walked toward her, gently calling her name. When he got no reply and the realization that she might be dead crept up on him, Andy got scared and ran from the Shue household. He skipped telling Edward Shue about his wife and went straight to his mother, who then called Dr. George W. Knapp to the scene. It took about an hour for Dr. Knapp to get to the Shue house. In the meantime, Edward had gotten wind of the terrible scene Andy had found in the home. Wanting his new wife to have some dignity before Dr. Knapp came over and examined her, Edward took Zona's body upstairs, washed her, and dressed her in a high-neck dress with a stiff collar. He also placed a veil over her face. Dr. Knapp arrived to find a very distressed Edward, wanting a swift examination and a quick determination of her cause of death. He hovered over the body as the doctor looked over her, getting very agitated if he got near Zona's neck or head. The doctor said he didn't want to upset the grieving widower and assumed that he was just being protective of her body. Dr. Knapp determined that Elva had died of everlasting faint, which, in modern terms, is somewhat akin to a heart attack. Zona's body was taken to her childhood home in Little Sewell Mountain, West Virginia, so that her family could attend her funeral and bury her nearby. At her funeral, Edward was again acting very odd and was pacing back and forth at the head of the open casket. He fussed with her veil and her collar and added a heavy scarf around the neck, insisting it was her favorite and she would have wanted to be buried with it. Again, everyone in attendance gave him the benefit of the doubt for his weird behavior and assumed he was just grieving and being protective of his wife's body. That is, everyone except Elva's mother, Mary Jane Heister. Mary had never liked Edward and was convinced he had something to do with her death. Mary prayed to God for weeks that Zona would return to her somehow and reveal the truth of her death. Weeks later, Mary had 4 dreams in a row in which Zona appeared to her. In the first one, she appeared as a bright light, and she gradually took shape over the next 3 nights. Zona told her mother that Edward had abused her and had viciously attacked her one night when he thought she hadn't cooked any meat for dinner. Zona told her mother that her new husband had broken her neck. Then, as if in a horror movie, Mary said Elva turned her whole head around so it was sitting backwards on her shoulders and continued to look her mother in the eyes as she walked forward out of the room. Mary, along with her brother-in-law, Johnson Heister, went to prosecutor John A. Preston. She told Preston about her suspicions of Edward, his strange behavior at the funeral, and the series of dreams she had been having. In a frenzy, she told him she knew Zona had appeared to her to tell on Edward. It was unclear whether Preston believed Mary's story about the dream, or if she was just persistent enough to spur him into action, but he agreed to reopen that case. He began asking questions of people around town. The Shue's neighbors repeated that Mary had said about Edward acting strangely at the funeral. When questioned, Dr. Knapp admitted he hadn't done the most thorough of examinations, as Edward had seemed incredibly distressed. The testimony from the townspeople, Dr. Knapp's confession, and Mary's assistant all led Preston to order an exhumation of Zona's body for a full autopsy. Shue forcefully objected to the exhumation. He was told that the autopsy would be part of a broader inquest, which he would be forced to attend. Shue was overheard saying that he knew he would be implicated in Zona's death, but that they will not be able to prove he did it. The autopsy almost immediately found that Zona had, in fact, been murdered by strangulation. A local paper, the Pocahontas Times, reported, on the throat were the marks of fingers indicating that she had been choken, that the neck was dislocated between the first and second vertebrae. The ligaments were torn and ruptured. The windpipe had been crushed to a point in front of the neck. The autopsy had played out exactly how Mary's dreams said it would. Preston began looking into Shu's past for more evidence that he may have committed this crime. The autopsy wasn't enough, as nobody could prove that Shu was the one who had broken his wife's neck. It turned out Zona was Shu's third wife. His first two wives had also died in mysterious circumstances. His first wife had died after falling from a haystack and also suffered a broken neck. The second had a rock dropped on her from a roof while she was helping her husband repair a chimney. One report says that Shu had briefly been in jail for stealing a horse and had told one of his fellow inmates that he planned on having 7 wives. Everything Preston had heard and seen was enough for him to bring Shu to trial. Preston wanted to avoid Mary's testimony about her dreams, as he felt it might discredit the case. Though Shu's lawyer extensively questioned her about it, Mary steadfastly stuck to her story. No detail ever changed over the intensive interrogation. The defendant also took the stand, which is unusual in murder trials. He gave a rambling, incoherent, and off-putting testimony in which he asked the jury to look into his face and then say if he was guilty. The Greenbrier Independent stated that Shu's testimony, manner, and so forth made an unfavorable impression on the spectators. On June 22, 1897, after only an hour and 10 minutes of deliberation, the grand jury found Erasmus Edward Shu guilty of murder. They made sure to clarify that it was because of the circumstantial evidence and not because of a ghost testimony. Despite the jury's insistence, their conviction had nothing to do with the paranormal. The town still knew that Elva's body would have never been exhumed and re-examined if it weren't for Mary's dreams, and her insistence that something nefarious had happened to her daughter. In Greenbrier County today, there is a plaque that reads, "Interred in a nearby cemetery is Zona Heaster Shu." Her death in 1897 was presumed natural until her spirit appeared to her mother to describe how she was killed by her husband Edward. Autopsy on the exhumed body verified the apparition's account. Edward, found guilty of murder, was sent to state prison. Indeed, Edward had been sent to prison for his third wife's death, and died on March 13th, 1900, after an epidemic tore through the prison population.